Okay, now we move on to our next topic, which is audit documentation. Right, so for the audit documentation, we would like to know the definition, the meaning of the audit documentation. So audit documentation, it means that here we falls under the working paper. So the content of audit working paper, so and then the importance of working paper, types of audit working paper, and the next one will be characteristic of good audit documentation. So it means that here what are the characteristics in order to have documentation that is good in auditing. And the last one is the control and right to the audit working papers. Alright, so for the definition, is actually the principal record of auditing procedures applied. So all the procedures that we did in order to get the audit evidence, and then the evidence obtained from the audit work previously, and then also the conclusions reached by the audit in the engagement. So this is what is working paper. Right, number one is going to record all the procedures. Number two is related with the evidence, and the third one is the conclusion. And then it should include the information of auditors consider necessary to conduct the audit, and the information needed to prepare for an audit report. Right, next is the content of the audit working paper. So these are the content. So the first one is a record of evidence accumulated. So it means that in this kind of working paper, all the evidence that you gathered during the audit work, so you have to document in this working paper. And then it's also include all the result of tests. All the tests that you did should be here also. And then data for determining the proper type of audit report. So it means that what the conclusion that you come up with the audit report also have to stated in the working paper. And then it also include documentation about significant audit findings or issues. So the action taken, how you solve the problem, and then the basis for the conclusion reached. And then the next one will be the importance of audit working papers. Number one is basis for planning. Number two is like, so this kind of working paper can be reviewed by the supervisor or partners. And the next one will be, so this is the important sources of information in order to assist auditor in deciding the appropriate audit report to issue. So it means that here this is the important sources that you have in the working paper in order to come up with the audit opinion. And the next one will be data in the files are useful for evaluating the adequacy of audit scope and the fairness of the financial statement. So it means that here in this file also is consists of audit scope, the length, the depth of coverage that you did in audit work in come up with the report. It also contains information needed to assist the client in the preparation of the financial statement. So it means that here if we have find something, some improvement or anything that we want them to make effective and so on, so we also have to state in this working paper. Right, so this one also it can use as a reference by the supervisory personnel to evaluate whether sufficient appropriate evidence was accumulated to justify the audit report. So it means that here from the working paper, so they can evaluate the working paper to make sure whether the information is enough to come up with the opinion. And also it serves as a basis for the text preparing, alright? Okay, next one will be the source of information for issuing communication to accountant and management concerning various matters such as internal control witnesses or operational recommendation. So it means that here if there is communicate between the auditor and the accountant and the management related with the internal control witnesses, so it means that they would like to say something that the system is not good, so everything should be included in this working paper. So next one is also a useful frame of references for training personnel and as the aid in planning and coordinating subsequent audit. So it means that here if they refer to a person, training personnel, whether they need in planning or in order to coordinate in doing the audit. Alright, types of audit working paper. So we have two, permanent file and current file. So permanent file is actually we would like to store the documents relevant to the audit work and the future years. So it means that here all the information that consists in this file is going to use for the current period and also for the future period. For example, copies of company's constitution, and then continuing contract. So it means that here the information is going to use for the current period. It means that for the audit for that year, and also it's going to use for audit for the next period. What about the current working paper? So documentary record of evidence gathered and conclusion reached on this audit. So it means that it's only for the current year audit. Right, now we move on to the permanent files. So definition, data of historical or continuing nature pertinent to the current audit. So relevant information from time to time. So it means that here, so this is the information. It doesn't mean that it couldn't be changed. It can be changed, but the information that we would like to have this information more than one audit period. Okay, include extract or copies of such company documentation of continuing importance of the articles of incorporation, so memorandum of association or articles of association, and then bond issues, term of debentures, and copies of important contract. For say contract which is we need it more than 1 year contract. Right, analysis from previous years of account that have been continuing importance to the auditor. So it means that here what the auditor identified in the previous year, so they still would have to the same information in the current year. So it means here that information also should be included in the permanent file. And then information related to understanding of the internal control and assessment of the control risk. Because why? The internal control is actually internal control system for the company is actually we are going to use more than one period. Once we know the company itself, so the information of the control, so the same information of control we have to use for the future period. Okay. So we have to identify, is there any changes of the internal control or not? If there is a changes in the internal control, so we have to update our permanent file. Alright, the result of analytical procedures from previous year's audit. So it means that here once we did analysis in previous year audit, so if the information we still need to use for the current period, so this one also should be in the permanent file. Alright, specimen of the director's signatures, right? The example how the director's signatures of the directors who already have the power, and then the company's constitution or rules of the company. Next one will be documentation relating to ongoing contract and agreements, that like we said before, all the contract and agreement. Continuing analysis of accounts that are important to the auditor. It doesn't matter what the auditor thinks that one is important. And the result of analytical procedure from the previous year. Minutes of shareholders and management meeting. So it means that here maybe the meeting is held last year, but then the implementation may be for the current year. And then details of location relevant to the audit planning. Alright. And then next one will be copies of significant correspondence between the auditor and the client. So anything that you think that this is important between you in order to do next year audit, so you have to bear in mind, you have to keep in this kind of permanent file. So what is current file? So current file is actually all audit documentation applicable to the under year audit or the current year that we audit, such as audit program. So what is the audit program? It's a standard required a written audit program for every audit. So it means that here, so how are you going to do this kind of audit? So every year you have to state this one in your current file. So how suppose you would like to do your audit, and then the general information including documents to support audit for a current year. So it means that here all the documentation that you think that it will support for the current year audit, so it means that that one will be in the current file. Because why? It's only for that audit for that period. Example, audit planning memos, abstract or copies of minutes of board of directors meeting, abstract or contract agreements not included in the permanent file. So whatever it is for the current period, you put in the current files. Alright, next one, what is other information? Working of the trial balance. So we have the list of the ledger accounts and also the year-end account balances, because that one is the information that we need to audit for the current year. And then also we have the supporting schedules such as analysis, our trial balance, list of accounts, reconciliation amount, test of reasonableness, and then procedures, what suppose we do, examination on the supporting documents, right? For example, we would like to test on the receipt, on the invoices, right? And then informational and outside documentation. It doesn't matter the information that we receive from the bank in order for the current year audit or the third party, so everything should be included in the permanent file. Current file. Alright, so next one is the characteristic of good audit documentation. So what are the things that you should have? Number one is a headline. So it means that you should have the client name, the title, and the balance sheet date. Alright, and then you should have the initials. It means that who prepared for that file. Okay, if the file is doing by more than one person, they should have the initial who is doing on that part. So initials for reviewer and date review completed. So it means that if the file is going to be reviewed by the supervisor or audit partner, so all those initials and reviews, date and completed should be stated. Alright, description of the test performed and findings, and then also it should have the assessment where the test indicate material misstatement in an account. So whether indicate material misstatement, they should stated in the current file. So tick marks and legend indicating work performed by the auditor. So you have to do some ticking to make sure that you already did your part. So index to identify the location of the paper. So it means that we have the indexing also. So indexing, we would not like to know the location. For it means, for example, we have the assets, we have the liabilities, we have income, we have the expenses. So we have to index all those one. And then we also have to the cross-reference. Cross-reference, it means that to the related document. Alright, so it means that next one includes sufficient information to fulfill the objective for which it was designed. Alright, so it means that here such information is that sufficient to fulfill your objective. And then the next one is the conclusion that will reach about the segment of the audit should be plainly stated. So the conclusion also. Alright, so next one, the process of indexing and cross-routing provides a trail from the financial statement to the individual audit documents, and a review can easily follow. So it means that here indexing and cross-reference. So it means that, for example, I give you one item. We have the non-current asset, for example, land. So it should be, where's the figure come from, and then you should cross back to the information, where the information come from, and so on. So when the auditor perform the audit work on one day working paper and supporting information is obtained from another working paper, so the auditor should cross-reference the information in each working paper. Right? So for example, they have information from this working paper and it relates with the another working paper. For example, as I mentioned earlier, for example, they decided to purchase a piece of land. All right, whether the purchase of piece of land is being agreed or discussed, or the resolution is derived in the meeting. For example, in the board of directors meeting, for example. So the board of directors meeting, it should be have in the current file, and also if the information that we needed more than one audit period, it should be consist in the permanent or working file. So if they have both, so we have to show the cross reference. Alright, it can act as the evidence to work performed by the auditor, as well as to avoid duplication of work. Alright, and then control and right to the audit working paper. So the ownership of working paper is of course the auditor. Alright, and then the auditor should retain audit documents for a reasonable period of time to meet the needs auditors practice and legal record intention requirements. So it means that here you have to hold this kind of information for a certain period. So part A5 MIA bylaw, Code of Professional Conduct and Ethics, highlighted that there is a need to maintain a confidential relationship with a client. So it means that here your working paper is actually the confidential information that the client couldn't see what you did in your working paper, except subpoenaed or the court order to give testimony by the court, and then used as part of the MIA approved peer review program with other chartered accountant firms. Alright, so here audit working papers, if we can see here, alright, we can see the information stated down there. So like the 15,000 of land, building 75,000, and equipment 40,500. So this one you have to state or sign here per last year audit working paper. So it means that here the figure is actually the last figure, come from the last figure audit report, audit working paper that you did your work previously. So it means that when you come for this current year audit, so this figure is already arise. So it means that the figure is actually correct, or right information that you get from the previous years. And then for the addition also, you can see the B/1, B/4, B/2. So it means that here you do your working paper. It means that here you can see the additional of assets that purchased by the company. And then the retirements also 3,500 here is actually you have to identify whether there is sale of an asset and so on. Alright, and then the TB here shows that this figure 159,500 is actually you send to the trial balance. Same also with this one. So the 25,000 accumulated depreciation is actually come from the previous working paper. And then we can see the calculation that you did your work, whether the information is right or wrong. Now you can see here the figure that you transfer to trial balance. Okay. Alright, so here now we see if individual item, so how they derive the figure. Alright, so 40,500, 10,125. So it's what actually the sign for the per last year audit working paper, and then you have to see whether this information come from where, and then you also have to see this figure is sent to alright, here T stand for the additional addition check. So it means that okay, so you have the symbol sign here, you have B, you have T, you have N, right? So here, and then if you trace, you vouch, recompute, okay, and you state asset, and at the T stand for the addition check, it should be okay. So this is normally the symbols that used by the auditor. Thank you.